Welcome to another episode of Hempire. I'm your host, Pete Bahrenburg, here always with my trusty co-host and CEO and founder of PureWell, Nick DiFrancesco. Nick, how's it going today?
Pete, I'm doing better than good. I have someone on here that I'm very excited to talk to. And first of all, tell everybody who we're going to be speaking with.
Well, the man is a pioneer in the industry of not only music, but we're talking about live events. We're talking about branding with music. We're talking about branding with events, branding with artists. And he actually took the digital age of business from BMG to start making it what it is today. And we're talking about the almighty and powerful Kieve Huffman. How you doing, Kieve?
I'm doing great, Pete and Nick. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
Pleasure having you on, of course. And what an introduction. Kieve, I mean, very well earned. That's for sure. I mean, we could go into a myriad of things that you've done in your career, of course, but we're here obviously talking about cannabis on here on Hempire, and so you've worked with a lot of big brands, artists to bring them into cannabis. You've also worked with recently with Slipknot to launch their own cannabis line. Take me through what it takes to get a deal like this done with someone that's been already had a lot of success. I mean, how much do you have to put out your neck to make this happen for anyone with that type of stature?
Well, first of all, we don't, so I've built a lot of different brands, right? And one thing that I'm very careful with, and we are careful with at our company, is we generally shy away from building celebrity brands. And, so we're super selective if we are going to work with a artist of any sort. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Having worked in the music industry, I know that artists are, they're creatives, right? So it's very easy for them to get very excited about something and then, go off to the next shiny object very quickly. And so, and then there's just brand risk associated with doing a celebrity type brand, because you don't know what that celebrity is going to do, right? And that your whole brand equity could, kind of go down the toilet. But typically, so what we look for first and foremost is whether or not there's truly an authentic connection to the audience and that it's real, right? Because a lot of artists have tried to jump into cannabis because they see it as a quick way to make a buck, right? And the reality is that there's no quick way to make a buck in cannabis, and it's
that's for sure.
It's like certainly may look like that from the outside, but it's really challenging and it's really hard. And really, the only music focused brands that are celebrity focused that have survived and made it are the ones that are associated with like the authentic OGs, like the Snoops, like the Willie Nelsons, right? It's like, look, these guys, like, that's where they come from. Like, this is part of their essence, and therefore it is authentic. And so when we were talking to Clown from Slipknot, this was something that was very important to him. He has used cannabis for medicinal purposes in his own life for a very, very long time. It really has helped him through a lot of challenging times. And, for those in the audience who know a lot about the history of Slipknot, like, that band has been through a lot. They've
That's
had
for sure.
A lot of challenges. And so cannabis has been sort of this steady thing that's kind of helped him through it. And so when we decided to launch Clown Cannabis with him last year, it was coming from an authentic place. And that was important. And that was the only way that we knew that we were going to, be able to truly launch a brand around him as a celebrity in a way that was going to work. And because as you guys have seen, like, how many rappers are coming out with their own strain and then they're here today, gone tomorrow. You're like, next, it's like they're
so oversaturated. Let's be honest.
Yeah. And then, also, I think it's also important, and look, this is just a general approach that we take to branding is, we start with the target audience first, right? And so when you look at the target audience of the rap community, completely oversaturated when it comes to cannabis brands, right? And it's just like, okay, we don't really, like, we'll go over here, right, where there's not saturation, because
Right,
there's more opportunity. And so that's when we decided to launch Heavy Grass, which is the umbrella brand for our hard rock heavy metal audience, of which Clown Cannabis, is a collab, so we create lifestyle brands around a community, and then we will bring in artists, but we will use our umbrella brand, as you might want to call it, the Heavy Grass, to sort of, do the collaboration with the artists. And so what we'll go after is, like, we're looking for where, like, there aren't a lot of brands already, right? Which is pretty easy to find, honestly, in cannabis, because it's kind of crazy even to this point. Like, it seems like almost all of the brands are going after the same audiences, like, now, whether you're talking about the rap audience, or whether you're talking about the connoisseur, like heavy consumers, or whether you're talking about, there's been a real rush, over the last several years to kind of go after what they call the soccer moms, or the housewives, like the more low dose, like, kind of. But if you really take a look at it, like, go a little deeper, you say, like, all right, if you look at all of these different kind of targeted audiences, like, what's their cannabis brand? And almost there's really not one for the vast majority of audiences out there. So it's still very early days. So hopefully that answered your question. I kind of went off on a few tangents there, but yeah, we're there's the whole like concept around creating brands right now in cannabis is still an evolving situation, because I think we were talking about this, Nick, a little bit before we came on the air, is that most brands right now are being created with the sole idea of getting shelf space in their local dispensaries, versus like being created because they want to authentically connect to a specific audience and enhance that the lives of that audience, right? Delight that audience, connect with that audience, and really look at it like, okay, what products make sense for that audience versus what products do I have that I want to sell?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of people that they don't care about it being cool. They actually have pain. They have inflammation. They have anxiety. They have real problems because of everything that's going out in the world. And they need a brand that they can stay behind and they can trust because of the values. And that was another thing that we talked about. We talked about all the brands that you normally see. We always get kind of compared to alcohol or to these types of things where you see a Johnny Walker or Jim Beam, or these have stories behind it. Budweiser, these are families that fought in Prohibition or have fought for something that we are. And that's kind of what we do at PureWell as well. And I feel like there should be more of that. So do you feel like celebrities might not be the best option? Do you feel that think maybe social media influencers would do any better? We've heard both arguments that celebrities are more reliable and easier to coordinate campaigns with, and influencers can be a hassle. But again, are we still getting away from the fact, is it quality and what the brand it really stands for and how it can help you as a person, instead of just the person who's talking about it?
Yeah, so kind of getting back to what I was saying before, is like we really shy away from really focusing on individuals, right? As the brand spokesperson, as the brand itself, because ultimately, at its core, if you look at any other like consumer packaged goods industry in the world, they first start off with a consumer need or a consumer sort of base, right? And then work backwards from that to kind of figure out like what product or products make sense for that audience. And so that's the approach that we try to take as well, because and so some of these audiences, when you're talking about cannabis, are more on the medicinal side, right? It's like, hey, particularly as you start to get into like the older demographics, which is a huge opportunity, right, for cannabis, which is like, hey. And it's interesting because I put my mother into this category because she would have never considered consuming cannabis when I was growing up.
Right.
And meanwhile, she takes it now because it helps her with her lupus arthritis, and it allows her, it's one less pharmaceutical she has to take, right? And I think that whole generation now has really kind of, made a significant transition. But yet to this day, like where are those brands? Like where is the brand for my mother? It doesn't exist. Right?
Kieve, we're right here. That's what we're saying. And that's okay. So look, you've basically worked with all of major music, film, TV companies. You've worked with major brands like Apple, Microsoft, Mountain Dew, Jägermeister. I mean, we could rattle these off forever. But the truth is that what do you think it's going to take for cannabis to make a brand name as recognizable as Apple, Microsoft, where the stigma is gone, or because maybe it helps somebody? What do you think we could do?
Well, I think at its core, it's like it just starts from the base, is that the brand itself needs to be created with an international audience really in mind. And it doesn't necessarily, I'm not even, actually maybe even a better way to say it is a borderless audience in mind, right? It's like, who is this for, right? And if the brand is created for an audience that exists everywhere in the world, then you've already got a leg up on most of the brands that are currently being created in cannabis, right? And so, because as things now are starting, look, it's a matter of when, not if, right? Like things are moving, trending towards, we're going towards legalization. I was just down in Mexico last week. It's like, it's incredible what's going on down there right now. Like things are going to be happening very quickly over the next couple of years. I mean, how embarrassing is us as U.S. citizens that like Canada, we're going to be the last country in North America to go legal, right? I mean,
right.
Like what's going on here?
We were used to be the first in everything, right?
It used to be that way. I don't really know what's going on here, but regardless, is like, when I was down there in Mexico, what you see is like, they love American brands, down in Mexico, right? And so the fact that we were down there with our brands, we were promoting at a festival down there. It was called the Machaca Festival. It was like 40,000 people in Monterrey, Mexico. First time ever that cannabis brands were, activated, represented, presented to the general public at a music festival. Like, I didn't even realize this until after we were done. And like my business partner down there, she's like, Kieve, I didn't really want to freak you out, like kind of leading into this, but you do realize that this was incredibly groundbreaking and that this has never been done before in the history of Mexico. And I was like, what?
And could you think that just a couple years ago that was even the case? Like, exactly. I mean, someone to say that, where, again, we're constantly fighting this. And I remember you saying in an interview recently, cannabis has literally been, and I don't want to take your words out of your mouth, but the hardest industry for you. I mean, you said those words. I mean, do you feel that way still? I mean, it's got to be, right? I mean, people have no idea how hard it is to be in cannabis as an industry.
Yeah, I mean, by magnitudes of, multiples of whatever number you want to put on, it's the hardest industry ever because of all the uncertainties, because of the legal restrictions, because of the hurdles that even private companies put on you, right? Like the platforms, like, the social media platforms, the advertising platforms that, the rules are constantly changing. Like, where is the bar? And even they won't even tell you what the rules are, right? Like, and so it's just super, it's just everything out there, not having access to banking, not having access to, having to do things in this country state by state. I mean, it's really crazy, right? Like, it's like I'd say, during that first green rush that happened, this was probably like 2017, 2018. All this funny money was being thrown into all these businesses, and my last company was one of them. Honestly, we raised a crazy amount of money, at 25 million over 6 years, but it was a lot of it was being fueled from the Canadian public markets because those companies got really overvalued, obviously, and then they came crashing down in 2019. But anyway, during that boom, you see a lot of these bigger cannabis companies were recruiting a lot of senior execs from outside industries, and I was thrilled, right? It's like, fine, we're getting some professionals coming in there. I mean, look, there's been a lot of amazing professionals within the industry, but then there's been some not so amazing professionals, not
of course,
truly professionals within the industry as well. And so it's like, all right, we're finally getting some of this expertise to come in, and particularly on the marketing side. How many high profile CMOs came into these companies and they left screaming within 6 months, right? Because it's like their entire toolbox was thrown out the window. It's like, wait a minute, I can't do this or this or this. It's like, no, you have to basically reimagine the rules because you have to figure out everything from scratch. And that's not for everyone. And for me, it's exciting and thrilling, but for most people it freaks them out, and that's what makes this industry so both exhilarating but also incredibly frustrating, right?
I mean, people don't even understand that we can't market on any traditional platform. Like you said, there's cliff notes of marketing of how to build a company. I might as well just throw that out the window because none of it applies to cannabis at all. You can't even market on Instagram, Facebook. People don't realize this. Any Google, there's just when the normal things that everyone's like, yeah, I'll just put myself on Google. I'll just, we'll just throw some ads up on Facebook and Instagram. Again, very basic to major marketing strategies that we talk about in multi-million-dollar companies, but something that simple, even talking about influencers and talking about celebrities, where so many people don't even want to talk about cannabis and CBD and they're censored, but also we haven't caught up. And because of that, right, we go through a lot of hoops and it's for the best of the best. I feel like it's the Marines. It's truly the top of the top that make it successful in cannabis. And it's because, and we're going to get back into this, understanding it's not about slapping your name on something. It's going to take time. It's not going to hold weight because everybody's tired of that. Everybody wants a quality product. They want something they can believe in, something that's actually going to help them, that stimulate. This is why I made this show, that we're doing this, to bring people on like you to talk about the ins and outs of the industry so people understand, but really understand and legitimize cannabis on a medical level, but also bring awareness to the deaf ears that are happening out in the world right now. And it can be from you, it could be from athletes, it could be from anyone, that so many people are getting benefits from this plant that's going on deaf ears. Or how about if you want to take cannabis and you believe in it, where do I go? Where's the quality control? Where's the regulation? You talked about, something on, it's an article on Benzinga about music and cannabis branding. And I wanted to ask you a few things, because obviously we talk about Bob Marley, Willie Nelson, Snoop Dogg, the Mount Rushmore of musicians who have devoted life and their career to cannabis, like you had mentioned earlier. And then you have popular musicians who have been very involved in their brands, but neither put themselves at the forefront of the brand. And that's kind of what you mentioned before. And they're letting the quality speak for themselves. And it seems to be successful. Why do you think that's being successful?
Well, because look, it goes back. So at my last company, it was called Prohibited Media. We had an in-house agency. We worked on over 60 different brand projects. And we turned down a lot of brand projects because we didn't believe in them. But one of the brand projects that we did believe in was working with this guy named Chavo. And Chavo is for those of you who don't know, the bass player for System of a Down. And he came in because he's a true believer. It's authentic. He believes in the power of the plant. And for him, everything was about was about quality. Like it was super important to him. Like he wanted to have incredible quality control for his brand. So one of the first things that we did was like, look, Chavo, you should, first of all, let's not put you front and center here. Let's create a brand that kind of makes sense. And then you can kind of help, bring awareness to this brand. And the brand it's called 22 Red. It's in a lot of states now. I think they're in more than a handful of states, but they started here in California. And what's interesting is I just ran into Chavo recently, and he told me, he's like, look, man, at this point, like I actually almost try to hide from my brand. Like, I don't even want people to know that I'm part of this brand, right? Because I want the brand to stand on its own, and I stand behind the quality. I stand behind, what it stands for. And I will always talk about it. Obviously it's my baby, but I don't want to get in the way of it because it's its own thing. So to me, that's why that's working. And that's why 22 Red is in multiple states now, because most of these brands don't make it out of a single state because they don't, again, it's almost like a vanity project for some of these guys, right? Like, I just want to see I want to see my name on a package, right? Or I want to see my name on a strain, I want my own strain. That was like the big thing. And it's like, I want to have my own genetics. And it's like, well, good luck with that. I mean, but yeah, so, I think that is really it. Like at the end of the day, let's face it, consumers, you got to give consumers a lot of credit. They're pretty intelligent at the end of the day. People know they can see through, they have incredible BS detectors, right? It's like they see through this. Like, look, if this is not coming from an authentic place, then they're going to see through it. And so if they're looking for like, look, I need a consistent, quality experience that helps, it aids me in whatever it may be, aids me in relaxing, aids me in with my pain, aids me in being able to go out and have a good time, whatever it may be, right? Whatever the experience may be. It's like, they're not like looking and like, well, what celebrity's name is on the package. They're looking on what brand can I rely on? Because I know that that this delivers for me. And those are the brands that are going to succeed. And that's what we're starting the cream is starting to rise, right? A little bit. And it's bit by bit, man, because it's like, there's not a whole lot of those out there still.
No. And I mean, we were reading something yesterday about, nerds and nerd ropes and how people just basically plagiarize off of just regular candy bars and things like that. I mean, any way they can get into cannabis, they're going to do it to make a quick buck. And look, for the rest of us that haven't been doing that, it's been a journey. It's been a long journey, but it's a rewarding journey because people come to us every day and say, look, thank God you're doing it right. Thank God you're pairing with people that are doing this. And that's all I wanted to get through and say, especially to someone like you who is always worried about brands doing the right thing. I mean, you've launched some amazing, your story is incredible. And I really wanted to get you on to see, coming from other industries, coming from the music. I mean, look, I think it's extremely smart going into non-saturated markets, not going into reggae and rap. Because let's be honest, I mean, reggae and rap are, if you thought marijuana, you think Jamaica, you think Rasta. I mean, that's what, or it's like, oh, people are going to get high, or rappers always smoking weed on camera. And I'm sure you've got some crazy stories about that too. So going into, again, Slipknot, hard rock, but you also have something going on now with an EDM. I think you're working with a company that founders have been in the club scene. So EDM, and you're tapped into all the major music festivals and events. What are the opportunities maybe in the dance market? Again, I'm trying to understand from a music point of view. It's not really my specialty. It's definitely yours. What are they saying in that industry or that part of the music industry?
Well, look, there's so many opportunities right now because, like, kind of getting back to, I think one of my first points is like, look, there aren't brands that are targeted for these audiences right now.
Right.
So it's like, hey, you can almost take a dartboard out, right, and put every single music genre on there and throw the darts, and like, you know, you're going to land on one that doesn't have a cannabis brand. The two that are oversaturated, you mentioned, right? Rap and reggae. You know, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, right? You know, it's like,
I mean, it's like insane.
like but you know, like you look at almost every other, you know, genre.
Well, they also don't even stay around to build a name, right? I mean, a lot of these rappers are one day, out the other. They don't have sustainability, and of course, doesn't help the brand or the industry as a whole as it is. So,
yeah, well, it was interesting. We were part of a panel. This was back, I think, last December at a conference called Hall of Flowers. And it was Be Real from Cypress Hill. Chavo was there. We had Clown on, and then you know, there were a few others, but like I think B really kind of laid it out there in a way that I felt was you know, really like poignant in how he called out. It's like, look, the only brands that are going to be successful are the people that are coming into it, that are putting in the time. They're going to lay down the groundwork. And also, when I say laying down the groundwork, it's like you're showing up, right? It's not like, oh, I've got my people that are going to go out now and promote this. It's like you're going to the dispensaries. You're going to the events. You're putting yourself out there, because if you believe in something, then you need to kind of be out there and showing that you truly do believe it. And I'll give B, you know, look, he's got two brands right now in cannabis. He's got Insane, which is doing really well, and then he's got his dispensary chain called Dr. Green Thumb. And so but
he's doing it right.
He's doing it right, because he's building it like from the ground floor up, and he's showing up. And again, that gets to that authenticity, right? Like the audience, like look, oh, B's showing up, like this is his thing. He believes in this, right? And like, oh, I got to check it out. I'm like, oh, you know what? This is a great product, or this is a great dispensary.
Isn't that kind of sad though now in society, where we feel like a good contractor is just one that shows up to work on your house? Like, and you're talking about brands. And again, you're coming from an unbelievable lineage, but brands that lived and breathed it. Again, going back to alcohol, or going back to these brands that have been around for 100 years, where this has been their life. I mean, they believe in everything that this stands for, whether it's sneakers to clothing to food, but just behind what they do and back. And this is just not the case anymore. Let's sprinkle a couple affiliates. Let's get some influencers. Let's slap a celebrity on there. Why I think it's important is these celebrities, these influencers, could be musicians, could be politicians, could be anybody that gets behind it because it actually helped them for their own story. And having a company that understands that and builds quality and wants to give you something that you'll take, but it'll actually help you in whatever you're trying to deal with on an everyday basis. Or the fact that you have somebody said, look, you know, we have a lot of people on and said, look, I've been fighting with addiction. I've been looking with opiate abuse, and these very experienced, high profile doctors told me to do this. If I would have just known that there was an alternative like cannabis that had no side effects to help me, I wish I would have known that a long time ago, because a lot of these things wouldn't have happened. But understanding the brands too, building a brand that worries about quality and bringing that to the people. And I know that's something that's got to be important to you, especially with all the minutia that's in, music and everything else is out there. There's a lot of real musicians that are, when they speak from the heart and they make a song, it's because they live that song, right? They came from a place where they made that song because it meant something to them. You're talking about Slipknot, went through a ton of stuff. But there's a lot of different bands that use their stardom for positivity. Coldplay, U2. I mean, we can go on and on and on. So why don't us not just use it for our star status, but really the medical benefits of it. And again, I know I'm hammering this home, and I know that this is important to you, but because there's not a lot of this in the industry, why? Because everybody's trying to make a quick buck.
Yeah, well, and also there still is, look, there's still a lot of artists that for either personal reasons or industry reasons are very uncomfortable about kind of being out front about this. So like,
yep.
So still you've got like let's move over to sports for a minute. So you see a guy like Al Harrington, former NBA player, who created an incredible brand called Viola, and it's named after his mother and it's an authentic brand because this is something that has helped his mother, has helped his family. And also he's trying to really take an approach of like bringing this to the Black communities, of like quality products that have represent the medicinal benefits of cannabis. But, the one thing about Al is he's retired, right? So that's where he can go out there is like, these guys that are active athletes, they can't mess with their endorsements. They also get drug tested, so they don't want to put a bullseye on themselves. We had a brand at my last company that was focused on action sports, and there were some actually top action sports athletes that were investors in this company that could not be spokespeople in any way, shape, or form because action sports now is an Olympic sport. So like they would have been putting their Olympic careers at risk by stepping forward. So these are some other, these are some of the stigmas, some of the issues that we still kind of have to overcome to be able to have this become more of a, destigmatized and be able to have these more mainstream conversations. So in many ways, music is really leading the charge because the musicians, they don't have to worry about that, but although I will say we talked to a lot of musicians that are, and I will say there's some musicians that I know that are investors in a variety of different cannabis companies that prefer to stay behind the scenes still.
Right.
And, it's to each their own, but it certainly isn't helping, right? Because the more people we have out there kind of like talking about it, normalizing it, it just helps the industry as a whole. So I kudos to all these, everyone who is out there. I'll tell you an industry that I'm, sport that I'm really excited about because they are starting to really take a much more pro-cannabis approach is MMA. MMA, they allow CBD sponsors of their events and of their athletes. So, they seem to be moving really, kind of paving the way in many, many respects when it comes to athletics. And it's just, look, we're just chipping away, man. We're getting there, bit by bit. Can't move fast enough for any of us, right, that are already in it and have been in it for a minute now.
We had Riley Coates on, and he talked about the NHL kind of turning a blind eye to positive drug tests and stuff. So they're starting to get it. We did have, and you said MMA, and of course, Joe Rogan, of course, is all about it. Always bringing on athletes and because being in South Florida, we have America Top Team here. We have most of the big MMA guys are down here always. We see them constantly. But who did we have? Adriana Marias just recently came to our headquarters and loves our products, uses them and things like that. But he's the flyweight champion of the world in one. And here's the thing, can't bring it up. Can't even tell people this works for me because in Singapore, where his next fight is, it's completely outlawed to a point of it's like murder. So, I mean, someone that actually uses it and look, it actually helps me every day. Not paid. We don't have anybody that's paid or sponsored or anything like that. These are real athletes that come to us that use our products. And they say to them, you can't ever talk about it. Don't say anything. Don't put it on Instagram. Don't do anything because it's CBD and it's cannabis. And yet I have somebody like Kyle Turley come on and say, Oh my God. I've gone to everybody that's any type of thought leader and nobody wants to hear it. Knowing how the benefits that it is. So it's just, I wanted to ask you about the path you laid out working on the digital side of BMG, one of the largest music companies in the world. Did you ever expect the digital disruption of streaming would hit music so hard that the idea of going to a music store and pick up an album or a single would nearly be obsolete?
Well, certainly not when I started in the industry. Did I think that? Although I was probably one of the earliest people in the industry to come around to thinking that. And honestly, that's a big reason why I ended up leaving the industry, is because I was becoming the squeaky wheel. It was like, hey guys, like look at this pent up demand that we haven't been serving, and like we need to change our business models, and we need to change the way that we deliver music to fans. And at the time, that was not a very popular opinion. It was more of like, well, how do we put this genie back in the bottle? Let's start putting copy protection on CDs. Like, we really need to re-widgetize, the industry and get people back to buying shiny discs. And I was like, guys, those days are long gone.
They're long gone, right?
And I left, and I was like, man, this is going to be ugly, and it was, but now it's kind of come out on the other side, and now the industry is healthy again. But things got reconfigured, right? Like there's a lot, more money in, like, certainly streaming obviously is become a lot more of where the money's coming from, but there's also a lot of the sort of licensing opportunities have become bigger and bigger and bigger for making money. And certainly the live music aspect has become a much more important part of like how musicians, make their money now. So it just kind of things like had to readjust. But yeah, during that time, it was crazy because it was just so disruptive, right? It was like when Napster first came out and all these.
I mean, everyone remembers that.
It was just like, wow, this is crazy. Like, oh, I can get any music I want. Like, I can rip it, and yeah. Well, look, it was a hard look when you built an entire industry around like, oh, you have to spend $18 for this shiny disc that's got 12 songs on it, of which you only want one or two.
Right.
Like, that's not really a very consumer friendly offering. Right.
Right.
And so, like the customers eventually, of course, as they always do, they want, right? It's like, look, I want to be able to play whatever song I want to play whenever I want to play it. Pretty simple, right? You give me that and I'll sign up for it. And now, like, how many members does Spotify have? I have no idea, but like, I think it's over 100 million, I believe.
Oh, yeah. It's insane.
It's like throughout the world. It's huge.
So like Hall of Fame artists, both living and dead, are cashing out and selling out their legacy songwriting catalogs. Now the record labels are offering their music to new artists to use them as an interplay. Do you think record labels need to look at different ways to operate now that they are doing this, and maybe go about it a different way?
Well, I mean, look, and I can't blame any of these artists right now for taking a big payout. Like, it's sort of like, hey, who am I to say, like,
yeah,
you want,
right? Money's money. I mean,
you want to set up your family for, to be set for, multi-generational wealth, opportunity. I can't, say, that's not the right thing to do. However, what is starting to happen, right, is that, having more and more of this consolidation is that, look, these companies that are buying these catalogs, they're not in this for charity, right? So they're for-profit businesses, and so what will be interesting to see is just how they try to continue to monetize that, and there's always this constant look, and it's just market forces at play, right? Of like, well, the rights holders want more money and the consumers want easier access, for less money. And so figuring out where that balance is going to lie. But I'm going to be fascinated. I don't work in that industry on that side of it anymore.
Right. No, I understand.
It's really going to be interesting to see how things play out.
I mean, I don't know how much more we could hit on the fact that this has been a great interview, and hopefully we could, maybe talk after the show. But I mean, I don't know. Take us out, Pete. We always want to say, this is why we're doing this show. We want to hear from you. Please like, subscribe, comment. Tell us what we could have done different. Tell me what I could have asked him differently. There could have been some other questions or how we can make this show better. I mean, we're here to do this for you, for the people. And we're just so happy that you came on here. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention that we didn't touch on?
Well, I would love to mention that we are going to, again, sort of breaking new ground, is we are going to allow the people to invest in our company. We're doing the first ever brand. We're the first ever cannabis brand portfolio to go out and do a crowdfund, and we will be launching that soon. You can, we'll be announcing that. You can follow us. You can go to our website, engageyourbrands.com. You can go to my LinkedIn page and learn more, but that's something coming that I'm excited to get going, because the fact that if you're a music fan and a cannabis fan, you've never have had the opportunity to actually participate. So we're gonna provide that opportunity here very soon, and look. It's been a pleasure to be on here. Thanks for having me on, and let's definitely keep in contact on all this stuff, and as things continue to evolve and develop as it relates to branding, I'm always happy to talk.
I really appreciate that. Remember, check us out on Spotify, Tuned In, Apple Podcast, or obviously Cannabis Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in, and take care, everybody. Get educated.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.